They said it was just another flight to New York, ordinary passengers, tired faces, stale air, and one man sitting quietly in seat 14A wearing a faded purple coat and a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. No one knew who he was until a single glass of whiskey changed everything. When a drunk businessman decided to throw his drink at the clown-looking freak, laughter filled the cabin, but 10 minutes later that laughter turned into screams. Because the man in the purple coat wasn't just anyone. He was the Joker, and what he did next stunned everyone on that plane. Before we begin this dark and unbelievable story, hit subscribe and turn on the bell icon, because what you're about to hear will change how you see justice forever. The plane hummed steadily at 30,000 feet, a silver bird slicing through the clouds. The cabin lights glowed dimly, giving every face a tired shade of gray. Somewhere between business class arrogance and economy class despair sat him, the man with the faint smile and mismatched eyes. His hands rested calmly on his lap, the faint scent of cheap cologne and cigarette smoke surrounding him. No one noticed. No one ever does, until it's too late. The flight attendants whispered that he seemed odd. Quiet, polite, almost too polite. He didn't speak much, only observed. His gaze lingered not on the clouds, but on people, the greedy, the restless, the hollow. To most, he was just another weary traveler, but to him, they were characters. And tonight, he wasn't just a passenger. He was waiting for something, or someone. A loud chuckle broke the low murmur of the cabin. A man in a tailored suit stumbled past the aisle, his tie loosened, his arrogance dripping like the whiskey glass in his hand. "What are you supposed to be, huh?" he slurred, his voice heavy with mockery. He pointed at the man in the purple coat. "A clown on vacation?" A few passengers laughed nervously. The clown looked up, slowly. His painted smile cracked, his eyes unreadable. The businessman scoffed and tilted his drink. The amber liquid splashed across Joker's face. For a second, the world froze. The smell of whiskey filled the air. The businessman grinned, proud of his audience. "Guess you're not funny after all," he sneered. The Joker didn't move. He wiped his face with a napkin, carefully, like a man handling glass. His voice, when it came, was soft, too soft. "You know," he whispered, "some men drown in their own drinks. Others learn to swim." The man frowned, unamused. "What did you say?" But the Joker didn't answer. He just smiled, a cold, quiet smile that crawled under the skin of everyone watching. 10 minutes passed. The flight attendants moved on. The businessman returned to his seat, still laughing. The plane sank back into its rhythm, engines roaring beneath a fragile peace. Yet something felt off. The air was heavier. The laughter had died, replaced by a strange unease. The Joker leaned his head against the window, watching the night sky. His reflection looked back at him. Pale skin, dark eyes, a face that once terrified cities. But tonight wasn't about chaos. It was about balance. He had promised himself he wouldn't lose control again, unless someone deserved it. From a few rows ahead, the businessman's voice echoed, louder now, bragging about his company, his money, his connections. He talked about how he fired people for fun. The Joker's super smile returned, faint but sharper this time. Then the turbulence hit. The seatbelt signs blinked on. The plane trembled. Gasps filled the air. But through the chaos, the Joker's eyes stayed calm, as if he had been expecting it. When the shaking stopped, one of the flight attendants passed by, pale and trembling. The Joker caught her wrist gently. "Rough night," he said, his voice like silk. "Do me a favor, darling. Bring me another napkin. Someone made quite a mess earlier." She nodded quickly and hurried away. The businessman, growing restless, pressed the call button and shouted, "Hey! What's taking so long?" His tone dripped with entitlement. Passengers exchanged glances. That's when the intercom crackled. A tense voice filled the cabin. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're experiencing a minor technical issue with the cabin pressure system. Please remain seated." Murmurs spread. The businessman cursed under his breath. The Joker slowly unbuckled his seatbelt. His fingers brushed against something inside his coat, not a weapon, but a small silver coin, old and scratched. He flipped it, caught it, flipped it again. Each turn shimmered in the dim light. Heads or tails, justice or chaos. When the flight attendant returned, the Joker thanked her kindly. He looked at the businessman and said softly, "You know, I used to be like you once. Thought the world was mine. Thought people were toys." He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "Then I realized sometimes toys bite back." The businessman snorted, "You threatening me, freak?" The Joker tilted his head. No. Just wondering if you ever ask yourself how many lives you've destroyed for a promotion." The businessman froze for a moment. "What the hell are you talking about?" But before the Joker could respond, a loud beep echoed through the cabin. A mechanical warning sound. Oxygen masks dropped suddenly from the ceiling. Passengers screamed. The plane jolted violently. The lights flickered. Chaos erupted. The businessman panicked, fumbling for his mask, but his wasn't working. It dangled uselessly. He shouted for help, eyes wide with terror, and then he looked up and saw the Joker standing calmly beside him, holding a mask in his hand. "Breathe," the Joker whispered. "You've been choking on power long enough." The businessman grabbed for the mask, but the Joker stepped back, letting the air between them thin like a secret. The oxygen returned moments later. The lights steadied. The warning ended. The plane was quiet again. Too quiet. The businessman gasped, trembling. The Joker sat back in his seat, flipping his coin again. When the crew finally checked the cabin, they found nothing wrong. Everything was normal. Except for one thing, the businessman's mask line had been intentionally disconnected. And no one saw who did it. As the Joker looked out the window, the faint lights of the city glimmered below. He smiled almost sadly and whispered to himself, "Funny thing about justice, it only flies when you take it into your own hands." The rest of the flight seemed calmer on the surface, but under that calm lay a tension so sharp you could almost hear it hum. The businessman, pale and trembling, kept glancing toward the man in the purple coat. Every time their eyes met, he looked away, pretending to be busy, pretending not to remember the few horrifying seconds when he couldn't breathe. But Joker remembered every detail, every gasp, every twitch of fear. He remembered because it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about teaching. Fear, he believed, is the only teacher humanity listens to. He sat quietly, playing with the same silver coin, the faint reflection of the overhead light flickering across his face. Heads, mercy, tails, lesson. The coin landed on his palm with a soft clink. Tails. He smiled. From across the aisle, a teenage girl kept stealing glances at him. She had earbuds in, but her music wasn't loud enough to block out the whispers. She'd seen everything: the whiskey, the argument, the malfunctioning mask. Now she looked torn between curiosity and fear. Joker noticed her stare. He leaned slightly, his voice low. "You ever feel like the world's upside down, kid?" She hesitated. "All the time." He nodded, almost gently. "Good. Means you're awake." Before she could reply, the intercom crackled again. The captain's voice sounded strained this time. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated. We're about to experience some turbulence again. Nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about." The phrase people use right before everything falls apart. The plane shuddered violently. Overhead compartments rattled. Drink spilled. A baby cried somewhere in the back. The businessman cursed loudly, gripping his armrest as if the sky itself was out to get him. Joker didn't flinch. He simply whispered, "Chaos is honest." When the turbulence finally subsided, whispers sprayed among the passengers. Someone said the flight path had changed. Someone else mentioned a strange man who had messed with the oxygen mask earlier. Fear traveled faster than air pressure. Within minutes, a flight attendant approached Joker's row, her voice trembling. "Sir, the captain would like to have a word with you." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh, I didn't realize I'd made such an impression." "Please," she urged, her smile too polite to hide the fear behind it. Joker stood, stretching slowly, every movement deliberate. As he walked down the narrow aisle, dozens of eyes followed him. Some were curious, others terrified. He could almost hear their thoughts. Is he dangerous? What if he's the reason the plane's acting strange? He smiled to himself. Fear of the unknown, he thought, the oldest form of control. The cockpit door opened slightly, and a tall man in uniform stepped out. The co-pilot. His voice was steady, but his eyes weren't. "Sir, we've had reports of an incident about a passenger being threatened." Joker tilted his head. "Threatened? Oh dear, words can be dangerous things. Maybe I should start charging for mine." "This isn't a joke, sir," the co-pilot said firmly. "We just need you to stay calm and remain in your seat." Joker chuckled, low and warm. "I'm always calm. That's what worries people." He returned to his seat without another word. The businessman, however, wasn't satisfied. He stood up shakily, pointing a trembling finger. "He tried to kill me! He messed with my mask!" Passengers turned. Gasps, whispers, all eyes back on the Joker. He looked at the man, then at everyone else. His tone soft, but each word landing like glass against skin. Funny thing about accusations. They sound convincing until you look at who's making them. Then he leaned forward, eyes locked on the businessman. "Tell them, Mr. Collins. Tell them what you do for a living." The man froze. "Well, what?" "Oh, come now. You were bragging earlier, remember? About your company, about how you fired people, how you left a man's wife crying in a parking lot because her husband wasn't efficient enough." The cabin fell silent. The businessman's eyes widened. How do you know that?" Joker smiled faintly. "Let's just say I do my research before I fly." The whispers grew louder now, turning toward the businessman. His confidence cracked under the weight of 100 staring eyes. "You're insane," he shouted. "Maybe," Joker said softly, "but I'm not the one drowning in guilt." The captain's voice broke through the intercom once more. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're making an unscheduled stop in Chicago due to minor technical issues. Please remain calm." The plane began to descend. The city lights below shimmered like spilled jewels in the night. Joker looked out the window, calm, reflective, distant. The businessman sat trembling beside him, sweat beading his forehead. Then Joker leaned in, whispering just loud enough for him to hear. "You see, Mr. Collins, there are two kinds of turbulence in life. The kind outside your window, and the kind sitting right beside you." The man swallowed hard. As the plane lowered through the clouds, lightning flashed. Brief, blinding. For a second, Joker's face lit up, revealing a look that wasn't anger or hatred, but sorrow. Because deep down, he wasn't doing this for revenge. He was doing it for a reason no one understood yet. The plane landed safely minutes later. Relief filled the cabin. Passengers applauded. But when the seatbelt sign went off, something unexpected happened. Joker didn't move. He just sat there, smiling at the businessman. And then, quietly, he slid a folded napkin across the tray table. Written in red ink were the words, "Seat 14A was meant for you." The businessman's face drained of color. He looked down again, confused, but Joker was gone. Only his empty seat remained. Police cars swarmed the runway like hungry wolves. Red and blue lights bled through the night as passengers were ushered out of the plane, one by one, shivering under the weight of confusion and fear. The businessman, Mr. Collins, stood near the exit, clutching that crumpled napkin with trembling fingers. "Seat 14A was meant for you." The words burned in his mind like a prophecy. Security officers asked questions, searched the aisles, checked every seat and compartment. But the man in the purple coat, he was gone. No one saw him leave. No one saw him pass. The cameras caught nothing. It was as if he had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind only that faint trace of laughter echoing through the pressurized silence of the cabin. Outside, the cold wind slapped against Colin's face. He tried to steady his breathing, but each inhale felt heavier than the last. "He's a lunatic," he muttered to the officers. He threatened me, tried to kill me." One of them nodded, unimpressed. "Sir, we checked the footage. There's no sign of anyone touching your oxygen mask." Collins froze. "That's impossible." The officer shrugged. "Maybe you just panicked, sir." "It happens." But Collins knew panic. This wasn't that. This was precision. A man who could twist fear like a magician bends light, and deep down, he knew the truth. This wasn't random. The Joker knew his name, his company, his sins. Hours later, Collins sat alone in a sterile airport interrogation room. His tie hung loose, his shirt drenched in sweat. The lights buzzed faintly overhead. A detective entered, placing a small recorder on the table. "Mr. Collins, you said the suspect called himself Joker?" Collins hesitated. He didn't have to. You just knew. The way he smiled, the way he looked at you like he was reading your thoughts. The detective leaned forward. "Did he say anything about why he targeted you?" Collins looked down at his shaking hands. "He said, I deserved it." Silence filled the room. Then the detective slid a photo across the table, a grainy airport security image taken before the flight. "Is this the man you're talking about?" Collins squinted. It was him, the same purple coat, the same impossible grin. But the timestamp froze him 2 hours before the flight even boarded. He was at the gate?" Collins stammered. The detective nodded. "Yes, but here's the strange part." He flipped to another photo. Same spot, same angle. Taken just 5 minutes later, the man was gone. "No footage of him leaving," the detective said. "No record of a boarding pass. It's like he wasn't there at all." Collins's voice cracked. "Then who the hell was on that plane?" The detective sighed. "That's what we're trying to figure out." He stood, gathering his papers. "You might want to get some rest, Mr. Collins. You've been through a lot." When the detective left, the room fell silent again. Collins's reflection stared back at him through the one-way glass. Exhausted, broken, small. For the first time in years, he didn't see the confident executive who owned people's futures. He saw a man stripped of control and haunted by a ghost in a purple coat. He reached into his jacket pocket, fingers brushing against the napkin again. He pulled it out and froze. The words had changed. What was once, "Seat 14A was meant for you," now read, "Lesson learned, or shall we fly again?" His breath caught. The ink was still wet. He dropped the napkin as if it burned. His eyes darted to the door, still closed. No sound, no footsteps, but faintly, barely audible, a soft chuckle rippled through the air. The lights flickered, then darkness. Somewhere outside, in the corner of a parking lot, a janitor pushed a cart toward the terminal. A man in a purple coat walked beside him, hands in his pockets, humming a tune under his breath. "You shouldn't be here," the janitor muttered. "Police are crawling all over this place." The man smiled. "I know. Isn't it funny how they look for monsters and miss the ones who wear suits?" The janitor gave him a nervous glance. "So what now? You done with him?" Joker stopped walking. For a moment, his face softened, almost human, almost sad. "No one's ever done, friend. Some people just land later than others." He looked up at the night sky. Planes blinked in the distance, crossing paths like shooting stars. They all think justice has rules, that it wears a badge or carries a gavel. He grinned. "But me? I just teach people to look in the mirror." He tossed a silver coin into the air. It spun under the streetlight. Heads, tails, balance. The janitor caught it. "What's this for?" "Your choice," Joker said, stepping into the shadows. "Heads, you walk away. Tails, You join the comedy." Before the janitor could reply, Joker was gone, vanished into the hum of the night. Only the faint echo of his laughter lingered, drifting through the fog like a haunting melody. By morning, the story hit every news channel. Unidentified man causes panic on Flight 372, then disappears. Police released a blurry image of the suspect, warning the public. But the caption beneath it was what caught everyone's attention. "Individual may be impersonating the Joker. Authorities deny confirmation of his identity." In his penthouse apartment, Mr. Collins sat staring at the TV, pale and silent. The napkin lay beside him. The news anchor's voice droned in the background, but all he could hear was that single question echoing in his head. Lesson learned, or shall we fly again? He stood slowly, walked to the window, and looked out over the city, a city filled with faces just like his. Greedy, arrogant, unaware. And for the first time, he understood what the Joker had meant. Justice wasn't always lawful. Sometimes it wore a smile. He looked down at the napkin one last time and smiled back. Some say the Joker vanished that night. Others believe he never left, just started flying under a different name. Maybe justice doesn't always wear a badge. Sometimes it just smiles back. If this story sent chills down your spine, subscribe and hit the bell icon, because more dark, twisted tales like this are coming soon.